Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is Introduction to Environment and Ecology. Now, in this video, we will understand about environment and how it affects our overall well-being. Now, environment refers to everything that surrounds us. It includes the biotic elements. Now, biotic elements are the living part of the environment. So anything which is living like plants, animals, and microorganisms are called biotic elements. And abiotic elements are the non-living things such as water, air, sunlight, soil, and temperature. So both abiotic and biotic combined together make an environment. It represents a complex web of relationship among the living species, habitats, and overall systems of nature. We're going to understand what is the meaning of species, habitats, etc. in the coming slides. Now, let us first understand what are the components of environment. In the first slide, we have learned that environment is a combination of living and non-living things, that is biotic and abiotic. Now we are going to talk about the components of environment. What constitutes environment? Now, the major component of environment is atmosphere. Now, what is atmosphere? Now, the gaseous envelope around the earth comprises multiple layers. So the air that we breathe in has different layers as you go up. So the bottommost layer in which we, the human beings, live, that is the atmosphere, is called troposphere. And then comes stratosphere, mesosphere, and exosphere. These are different layers in the atmosphere, right? And atmosphere is a component of environment. Now, every layer has a unique characteristics and has its own significance. We are going to learn about them later. It's vital for climate regulation. It provides essential gases for life and shields us from harmful cosmic rays. Now just imagine if there was no oxygen in the air, will the humans survive? Absolutely not. So atmosphere is very important for all the living beings on the earth, on any planet. If you want something which is living, it needs to have an atmosphere. Without atmosphere, living things cannot survive. Also, since there are different layers, troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, and exosphere at different levels, they protect the harmful sun rays. Just imagine if the sun rays were directly coming and getting exposed to our skin. Do you think that we would have survived? Absolutely not. That is not possible. So the atmosphere gives a protective blanket to all the human beings. Now, the second component is hydrosphere. Now, the word hydro itself includes water. Hydro means water. So anything which includes water, that is water bodies such as oceans, seas, lakes, rivers, groundwater, and even the water vapor which is present in the atmosphere is part of hydrosphere. So atmosphere is all about the air, different layers, and hydrosphere is all about water. Atmosphere plays a very crucial role in supporting aquatic life, maintaining the planet's temperature, and participating in various biogeochemical cycles. Can you imagine life on Earth without water? It's not possible. Fish, aquatic marine life, there are so many living organisms in different forms of water. They will not be able to survive. So hydrosphere is a very important component of environment, and this includes everything that has to do with water. The third component of environment is lithosphere. Now it comprises the earth crust and the uppermost solid mantle. It provides the foundation for terrestrial life, offering nutrients for plants and habitat for many organisms. So the lithosphere is the earth on which we are standing. It is the earth crust, the topmost layer of the earth on which we live and we grow our crops, plants, vegetables. This lithosphere provides terrestrial life. Everything that has to do around us, birds, animals, trees, plants. The lithosphere also provides nutrients for plants and habitat for many organisms, the insects, the flies, everything is there on lithosphere. So we have studied atmosphere, the air component, hydrosphere, the water component, lithosphere, the land on which we live and stand. The fourth important component is biosphere. Now, biosphere is the zone of life on Earth, spreading across the deepest part of the oceans to the high altitudes in the atmosphere. It includes all ecosystems and living beings, representing the intricate world of all life on Earth. So anything that is living, it could be below the ocean or up in the atmosphere. Everything, including all the animals, plants, insects, birds, the algae, everything is part of biosphere. So biosphere is the zone of life on Earth. So I hope this concept is absolutely clear. Now we understand what is environment, abiotic and biotic components, living and non-living. We also understand the components of environment, atmosphere, that is air, hydrosphere, that is water, lithosphere, that is the place where we stand on Earth, and the plants grow, and biosphere, everything that has the living part, which is above and below the sea level. Now, what is energy flow? Now, you must have thought that how do we as human beings survive? Well, we survive from the energy that we get from the plants and the animals that people consume. Now, where do the plants and the animals get their energy? Well, they have their another source of energy, which is the sun. The sun is responsible for providing food to the plants. So if the plants do not grow, will the humans survive? No. The plants and the crops take the energy from the sun. This energy is consumed and concentrated in these plants and crops. That is what we as human beings eat. So the energy is flowing. Energy is flowing from sun to the plant to the human beings, right? If a human being is consuming an animal, maybe a chicken, or maybe a hen, then the energy flow is from sun to the plant to the hen and then to the human beings, right? So the energy is flowing from one place to the other place. This is the concept of energy flow. The sun energy is harnessed by producers like plants, and then it flows through consumers and decomposers, driving the ecosystem function. Consumers are the components, the parts who take the sunlight through plants. Decomposers are the elements in the environment that decompose everything that is there on Earth. Let's suppose there is a dead animal. The dead animal the body gets decomposed if it is left out and open. How? Because of the bacteria, the insects, the birds, the other animals. So the environment is structured in such a way that the energy flows from one source to the other source. And this flow of energy is quite an interesting thing to look once we are going to study further. The second component is nutrient cycling. Now, nutrients are perpetually recycled in an ecosystem, from organism to the environment and back to the organism itself. Now, we have studied about energy flow, how the energy from the sun is transferred from plants to human beings. Similarly, the nutrients in the ecosystem are also transformed from organisms to the environment and then again back to the organisms, right? Similarly, the third concept is ecological succession. Now, ecosystems are dynamic and undergo constant changes over the time due to disturbances or natural progressions. Now, we must have heard and seen different movies in which we see dinosaurs. There was a time when the dinosaurs existed. Now they do not. Why? Because of ecological successions. The entire ecosystem is dynamic and undergoes certain changes. There are many plant species and animal species that are extinct. They are no more. Why? Because during the process of ecological successions, they got extinct. So ecological succession is a continuous process which happens after hundreds and thousands of years. A fourth important concept that we need to understand is biodiversity. Now, the variety of life, which includes species, genetics, and ecosystem diversity is crucial for the health and resilience of the ecosystem. Now, biodiversity overall is the entire earth on which the living organisms exist. Just imagine if there was only a lion in the jungle and there was no other animal, no deer, no rabbit, or no other animal which lion could consume. Will the lion survive? No, the biodiversity will fail. So, in order for the lion to survive, there are other animals which the lion consumes, right? So, this is how the biodiversity flows. So, biodiversity is not only about lions and animals, it's about everything: the water, the air, the plants, the sunlight, the nutrients. Everything consumes and makes biodiversity. So I hope these four concepts are absolutely clear. Now, let us understand the interdependence of living organisms. Now, there are three types of interdependence. First is predator and prey interaction. The second is symbiotic relationships. And the third is pollination. Now, let us understand the predator and the prey interaction. I gave you the example of lion and deer, right? So lion is someone who has to feed his hunger. Now lion, in order to feed his hunger, need something to eat, and that is the prey. So predator is the lion, and the animal which the lion is going to eat is the prey. Let's take an example of a deer. So in this case, the predator will be lion, and the deer, which is the food of the lion, will be the prey. And this is how the entire cycle works, right? And if it doesn't work, will not be able to survive. The life will not function. The biodiversity will not be complete. So the predator-prey relationship is very important for us to understand, because one component of living being is important for the survival of the other. Now, what is symbiotic relationship? Now, symbiotic relationship is like a husband-wife relationship. Both have to survive together and both cannot live without each other. So there are close long-term interactions between different species. Both mutually benefit with each other, right? For example, you must have seen, if you see a lion or a goat relaxing, you will see different types of insects that come on these animals, and they just roam around them and eat different types of bacteria or different types of insects which are there on their body. So this is symbiotic relationship. So the lion doesn't do anything. The lion will enjoy that if a bee is coming or if some insect is coming, that insect is trying to, eat something out of his body, which is disturbing him, right? So this type of relationship is called symbiotic relationship, in which both the parties are benefited. So the lion is getting rid of the insect which is on his body, and the insect who is eating the other insect is getting food, right? The third concept is pollination. Now, many plants rely on animals like bees, bats, birds for pollination. Now, pollination is transfer of pollen grains from one plant to the other. Now, in order for the plants to bear fruits, pollination is required. So the reason why we have crops, why we have plants growing from one plant to the other, is because of pollination. If the pollination doesn't happen, there will be no life on Earth. So this is a crucial part of plant reproduction and production of fruits, nuts, and seeds, which the other animals eat. So now we have understood a lot of good and basic concepts. Now, ecosystem is a distinct unit of the biosphere. It consists of community of organisms interacting with each other and with their physical environment as a system. So biosphere is the entire living space. Within biosphere, there are ecosystems. It is a community sort of thing in which a certain species of animal or wildlife is there, right? For example, the ecosystem of human beings. We do not live in forest. We live in places where other human beings exist. So we have our own ecosystem. Similarly, the animals have their own ecosystem. The fish, they have their own ecosystem. in the water. So ecosystem is a distinct unit of the biosphere. It is a community of organisms interacting with each other and with their physical environment. There are different types of ecosystems which are diverse, as I have given you already the examples: forest, grassland, deserts, aquatic ecosystem, freshwater ecosystem, etc. Now, if you have to understand the characteristics of ecosystem, each ecosystem is unique, characterized by its particular climate, geographical feature, and the specific set of organisms that live there. These characteristics influence the ecosystem structure, function, and the dynamics. So as I said, the biosphere, which is the entire living space on the earth, has different types of ecosystem, and all the ecosystem has different climate, geographical features specific to that particular organism which is living there. I've given you examples which I'm sure you will be able to understand. The ecosystem provides wider functions like nutrient cycling, water purification, climate regulation, erosion control, and habitat. Habitat is the place where we live. Additionally, they deliver invaluable ecosystem service such as food, water, fiber, and etc. the other things. Now, having understood environment, ecosystem, biosphere, and all the other components, let us now learn and understand environmental issues and threats. Now, one of the most important component of environment is the climate. Now, climate change is causing a lot of problems, not only for human beings, but also for the other living organisms, for animals, for insects. So climate change refers to significant change in global temperature and weather patterns over time. While climate change is a natural phenomena, human activities, primarily the burning of fossil fuels and deforestations, have greatly accelerated in the recent years. Now, you must have seen over the last 4 to 5 years instances of natural calamities like flood, cyclone, hurricane, earthquake, tsunami. The incidence of natural calamities has increased the frequency, their intensity, and the kind of havoc it is causing to the loss of life and property is immense, and it is increasing every day. Now, this is because of climate change, because of the interventions of human beings and exploitation of the earth by the human beings. The environment is not able to sustain itself. The environment is degrading. The environment, the entire climate is changing. That is why we are seeing different patterns of weather. Many a times in summers, you see extreme summers when the temperature goes beyond 50, which is not conducive for any life form on Earth. During the monsoons normally are getting shifted. Their trend, their pattern, the intensity, everything is changing. Now you do not get rains in monsoon season, but during the winters, most of the times you get floods during winters. Now these are not regular occasions. This is not how the climate, the weather used to function. But because of the intervention of human beings, because of the exploitation of land, water, and other resources, the climate is changing. The temperature of the earth is changing. So if there is slight, even an increase of 1 degree of temperature on the earth, the entire polar belt will melt. Just imagine if the ice on the mountains melt, it will come into the oceans. Now, oceans are at a certain level on the earth. Now, just imagine if all the water from the mountains comes in the ocean. The oceans will be overflowed. The land will be submerged. The earth on which the humans live will no more be a place to live because it will all be covered by water. And this is what is happening. This is climate change. So the consequence of climate change is far-reaching. It affects not only the weather, sea level, food production, wildlife, but human health, human existence, and the existence of mankind, existence of biosphere. There will be no ecosystem left if we do not control climate change. We need to find ways to mitigate climate change. So these changes can lead to more extreme weather events. I've given examples of flooding, drought, different types of earthquakes, flash floods, etc. I've also talked about the causes. The main cause is the increase in the greenhouse gas, which is carbon dioxide, methane, human activities by burning fossil fuels and deforestation. We are cutting down the forest. We are burning fossil fuels like anything. We are consuming and using all the fossil fuels available on the earth. We are extracting coal. We are exploiting water. We are not even leaving the hills, the mountains. We're building houses, hotels, resorts. Because of this, there is climate change. The effect is the rise in the global temperature. The ice caps are melting. The sea level is rising. The frequency is increasing, and the intensity of extreme weather events is increasing every day. It is causing huge disruption of ecosystem. So what are mitigation strategies? Now, in order to control climate change, mitigate climate change, we need to rebuild the earth. The destruction which we have caused, we need to rebuild it. We need to reduce greenhouse gas emission. We need to adopt renewable energy sources. We need to improve energy efficiency, reforestation, and promote sustainable practices. This is how we are going to control climate change. How we must have also heard about pollution. The pollution is introduction of contaminants into the natural environment, because of which there is adverse change. Now, if you go to big metropolitan cities, you won't be able to breathe because everywhere you'll get dust, smoke, harmful chemicals. These chemicals, dust particles and smoke get into your lungs. It affects your breathing system, cause different types of diseases, from cancer to respiratory diseases. These pollutants are life-threatening. So pollution can have profound effect on the environment. It affects air quality, water quality, soil health, and contributes to biodiversity loss and climate change. It also directly affects human health, causing respiratory diseases, cancers, and other health problems. Now, we know the components of pollution. Air pollution is because of the smoke that comes out of our vehicles, nitrogen oxide, carbon dioxide, sulfur oxide, carbon monoxide. Water pollution is caused by contamination of water bodies due to industrial discharge, agricultural runoff, improper waste disposal, and oil spills. Soil pollution is caused by the use of pesticides and fertilizers, industrial waste littering. Noise pollution is caused by excessive sound that have deleterious effect on human health and environment quality. And you must have heard about deforestation, that is cutting down of forests. We are clearing forests to build flats, buildings, malls, different types of farmlands. This often makes ways for agricultural activities and other purposes. But land degradation is a process in which the value of the environment is affected. Why? Because we are exploiting the earth. We are exploiting the natural environment. We are cutting down the forest. We are restricting animals from moving in the forest. Now, deforestation and land degradation leads to loss of habitat. It threatens biodiversity. They also contribute to climate change by reducing the amount of carbon dioxide that the forests absorb and by releasing carbon stored in trees. It is mainly because of human activities, urbanization, agriculture, logging, etc. It affects the biodiversity, disrupt water cycles, soil erosion, and contribute to climate change. And if you want to protect it, we need to have sustainable land management practices. We need to reforest. We need to replant trees in our environment. We need to have policies that protect forests and combat desertifications. And just imagine the biodiversity loss. Biodiversity, as we have studied, is the entire space in which the living organisms survive. The biodiversity loss will be caused by the destruction of habitat, We are cutting down the forest, which is destructing the habitat of the animals living in there. Where will the animals go? They will die. It is causing climate change, overexploitation of species, pollution, and introduction of invasive species. The consequence is loss of ecosystem resilience, disruption of ecosystem services. If you want to control and mitigate biodiversity, save the living organisms, we need to conserve, we need to protect the habitat, restore, follow sustainable practices, not use fossil fuels, but use renewable energy. Also use renewable energy in such a way that the renewable energy replenishes itself so that the future generations can also get that part. In this video, we are going to understand sustainable development and conservation. Now, what do you understand by the word sustainable development? Now, sustainable development has to do with meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations. Now, what do you mean by that? Well, we all see a lot of natural resources around us. We have groundwater, which we use to drink. We have trees that gives us the fresh air to breathe. Just imagine if we exploit these natural resources. There are no trees, plants left. Everything is cut down and we have bare buildings and houses. The groundwater has been extracted to a level for using industrial work that there is no groundwater left. The amount of depth or the height at which the water used to be available is no more available at the same height. You need to dig deep inside the earth to get the groundwater for drinking. Just imagine if this keeps on happening year after year. Will our future generations have proper air to breathe? Will they get protection through the natural resources? Will they get proper and safe drinking water? So this use of natural resources in a way that it sustains itself, it replenishes itself, and it is available for the future generation is called sustainable development. So we are using natural resources in a way that it replenishes itself. We are not exploiting it. We are giving time to the natural resources to rebuild itself. So if we are cutting down trees to building houses, we are planting even more number of trees somewhere else. We are balancing it out. We are not exploiting the groundwater for usage of industrial work because groundwater is supposed to be used for drinking purposes. This is how we are going to sustain these natural resources for future generation. And this is called sustainable development. In the context of environment and ecology, sustainable development is important. Why? Because it's promote harmony between human activities and the natural world. I gave you the example of groundwater and how it is being exploited at present. And in future, our future generations may not have drinking water. No, we need to find a balance between the human activities and how the nature works. We need to give time to the nature to replenish itself. We need to find a balance between economic growth, environmental protection, and social equality. Now let us understand the important components of sustainable development. Economic sustainability, social sustainability, and environmental sustainability. Now, what do you mean by economic sustainability? Now, people often say that in order to grow, in order to become a developed nation, we need to, expand our economy. And that we can only do while we use the natural resources. But in order to expand ourselves and become big as a country economically, we start exploiting these natural resources. For example, the industries exploit these natural resources for their own advantage, for increasing the production. But you have seen over the last few years and decades, the frequency and the intensity of natural calamities such as flood, earthquake, cyclone, hurricane, drought, all these natural calamities have increased. Their frequency has increased. Their intensity has increased. These natural calamities are causing huge devastation all over, loss of life and property. So what are we ultimately gaining? We are expanding ourselves economically, but does that have any sense? Does that make any sense? For the people in general, are we able to sustain it? No. So slowly, the industries are moving towards green manufacturing. You must have seen how the big companies are moving towards zero carbon emission by 2030. Apple, the biggest phone maker in the world, they're making iPhones, it's packaging everything using recycled items, using natural and recyclable material. They're consuming renewable energy and not using any non-renewable source of energy for production. And slowly they aim by 2030 to be completely carbon neutral. That is economic sustainability. We need to grow economically, but we also need to sustain the environment. We cannot compromise the environment vis-a-vis the economic growth. Now, what is social sustainability? Now, we must have seen in a world wherein everything is getting developed, we are having smart cities, we are having artificial intelligence, but at the same time, we have social discrimination, social inequality, poverty, hunger, illiteracy also increasing. But why is that so? Why the society is not getting equitable? Why everyone is not getting equal share of everything that is happening around? Equal access to healthcare, education, and resources. This has to be ensured. This is called social sustainability. Now, environmental sustainability, we have already discussed this. It involves making decisions and taking actions that is in the interest of protecting the nature, protecting the environment. For example, you must have seen sustainable farming and forest management practices. Recycling program, I gave you the example of Apple iPhone. So there are efforts being put in by the company and the world across to bring these small changes and save our environment and the people. Now, what are different ways of conservation? One is in situ and the other is ex situ. Now, in situ conservation is the process of protecting an endangered plant or animal species in its natural habitat. For example, tiger. Tiger as an animal is getting extinct because of hunting. So we need to protect the species of tiger in its natural habitat. That is, the tiger lives in the forest. So we need to protect the forest. And if we are able to protect the forest, we can protect the tiger as well. So if you want to protect tiger within the forest, that is within its own habitat, it is called in situ conservation. Now there is another term called ex situ conservation. It is preservation of components of biological diversity outside their natural habitat. So let's suppose we understand that for a tiger, the forest is the in situ conservation, wherein the tiger is in the natural habitat, that is the forest. But everything that happens beyond the forest is ex situ. That is the type of conservation measures we as human beings take. We do not cut the forest. We ensure that the animals are protected by the hunters. These methods are crucial for preserving biodiversity. We have understood in the first lesson that biodiversity is everything that is there in the form of living component. And once the biodiversity is preserved and saved, we can maintain ecological balance and thereby sustaining our natural resources. Some of the examples of in situ conservation is conserving the natural habitat, establishing protected areas such as national park, wildlife reserves. While the government invests in national parks and creates wildlife reserves so that the animals get the natural environment for their survival. Ex situ conservation is conservation of genetic resources through gene, pollen, seeds, seedlings, or tissue cultures. For example, you must have seen zoos, botanical garden, and aquariums, wherein you see different types of wild animals kept in a protected area. This is ex situ conservation. We are trying to protect those animals in their natural habitat by creating an artificial forest that is in a form of a circle wherein we have planted some trees and we have covered the entire area through fences. Botanical gardens have different types of plant species, rare, extinct, about to extinct, and aquariums have different varieties of fishes. So there are two ways of preserving the natural resources, the plants and the animals, in situ and ex situ. Now, what is the role of renewable energy in sustainability? Now, renewable energy often refers to as clean energy, any energy that can be renewed again and again. That is air, solar energy, water. This is renewable form of energy. It comes from natural sources or processes that are constantly replenished. We are seeing climate change in global warming. Renewable energy is getting reduced, and our reliance is more on fossil fuel. Once the fossil fuel consumption increases, it increases the greenhouse gases. Let's talk about environmental policies and laws. Let us first understand what is environment policy. Now, policy is something which is made by the government. Policy is made to regulate a particular activity. And why do we need environment policy? Why? Because environment is being misused. It has been exploited. And if the governments don't come with some policy, it will be exploited further. And we will have no place to live on the earth. The entire human mankind will be in danger. So the environmental policies are the measures which are put in place by government and non-government organizations to address the environmental issues and manage human activities impacting the environment. So environment policy is basically a directive, a guideline, a rule, a norm, which is created by the government, which every individual has to follow in his or her own country. The importance is that it is crucial for maintaining the health of our environment, and it prevents further environmental degradation. Just imagine if there is no government policy. If there is no policy by the government on environment, the environment will be exploited by people for their own use. Everywhere you will see buildings, tall structures, infrastructure would be created everywhere. All the natural resources will be exploited. Why? Because human beings will hamper these things because they want to create avenues for generation of money. They do not care about the nature, especially if we talk about the industrial sector. They want to expand their business. They want to make more profit. And that is why it is essential for the government to bring these policies, right? So environmental policies are very, very essential for the welfare of the people. The components of environmental policy is regulatory policy. That is, the government puts specific limits to pollution. For example, the vehicles have certain limitations and certain emission standards which they need to follow. For example, in India, if you have to drive a vehicle, a car, it has to be BS6 standard. It's a standard given by government, which all the vehicle manufacturers have to follow. So it's a regulatory policy by the government. Another form of policy is market-based policy. This type of policy encourages business practices that help and preserve the environment. For example, carbon credit and carbon trading. This is a concept wherein a company, if it moves from non-renewable to renewable resources, they can exchange it in a form of carbon credit. They can tell the government that we are now moving towards renewable energy, green energy, and we are not using non-renewable energy anymore. And you, as the government, need to acknowledge and give us a certificate or some form of credit, acknowledging the fact that we as business have obeyed or have agreed to follow the market-based policies. Some of the major environmental laws are the legal frameworks which are designed to regulate human activity and its impact on environment, protect natural resources, and ensure a sustainable future. Environmental laws and regulations are critical for enforcing environment policies. It will hold the violators accountable and incentivize environment-friendly practices. What are the components of the environmental laws? Clean Air Act, the US federal law designed to control air pollution at a national level. Similarly, all the other countries have their own laws. There is also Endangered Species Act, both in US and India. The European Union Habitat Directive, it aims to promote biodiversity, requiring the member states to take measures to maintain certain habitats. Now let's talk about the role of international environmental agreements. Now you must have heard different countries all across the world coming together in form of associations and agreeing on environmental issues. These agreements are treaties or conventions between countries on various environmental issues. These agreements facilitate international cooperation to tackle global environmental challenges such as climate change, ozone layer depletion, and pollution. Some of the examples the historic international environmental agreements are Paris Agreement, Kyoto Protocol, and Montreal Protocol. Paris Protocol is an international treaty that aims to limit global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial level. In Kyoto Protocol, which was in 1992, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was formed, and it committed the state parties to reduce greenhouse gas emission. So every country in the world decided that we are going to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, thereby following certain regulatory measures. Then we had Montreal Protocol. It is an international treaty which is there to protect the ozone layer by phasing out the production of numerous substances and gases which are responsible for depletion of ozone layer. Ozone is a layer which is there in the atmosphere, and it is getting depleted slowly because of the greenhouse gases. So the government and the world came together and formed an agreement that they're going to protect the ozone layer. Now, you must have heard a component called environmental impact assessment. Now, it is a process of evaluating the likely environmental impact of a proposed project or a development, taking into account different factors such as social, economic, cultural, and human health. I'll give you a good example. Let's suppose there is a big company that comes with a big project of creating a dam, right, to protect and save the water, the flood. So what this will require is, it will require people to be shifted, the places where people are living nearby the river, so that the dam can be created. In order to move people from their places, it will require a lot of changes. A lot of people will lose their livelihood. They have to move out from their homes. So what will be the impact? A lot of trees will be cut down. A lot of infrastructure in terms of construction would be required, and that would not only require money, but also a lot of resources. So what will be the impact of this project on the environment, on the people, on the natural resources which are already existing at that place? This is called environmental impact assessment. Without this assessment, no big project which interferes with the natural environment, which interferes with the forest, the water, can be approved. It is as per the government regulations. So environmental impact assessment is a crucial decision-making way. It helps to predict environmental consequences of a proposed development project. If it is going to harm the natural environment, there are certain modifications which are required to be made. And if it is really going to impact it adversely, that project might not get sanctioned at all. There are different components and examples of environmental impact assessment: screening, scoping, impact analysis, and mitigation. Screening determines whether the project will require EIA or not. For example, a small-scale construction may not require environmental impact assessment. However, if the project is a big industrial project, it will require the approval from the government. Scoping identifies which potential impacts are relevant to access. For example, an offshore drilling project would need to assess potential impact on marine life. So if any project is coming up, what is the scope of its impact on the nature, on the environment? It has to be found. Impact analysis predicts and identifies the environmental impacts of the project. For instance, a proposed mine would need to assess potential impact on local water quality and habitats. Mitigation proposes measures to minimize, offset, or to avoid identified impacts. For instance, a proposed road through a forest habitat may include mitigation measures, such as building wildlife crossings to reduce impact on local fauna. For example, if there is a road that is required to be constructed for the movement of people, there is no other way around, and that construction of road is going to destroy a lot of plants, trees, and natural vegetation. We need to find an alternative. We need to create a greenhouse corridor across the road so that the environment doesn't get affected. That is how environmental impact assessment works.